One phone call changed everything. I picked up the receiver, and a client turned my workday into hell. But that was also the exact moment his downfall began. My name is Jason, I'm 25, and I've always considered myself lucky when it comes to my job. Working in a paint store may not sound glamorous, but for me it's the perfect intersection of my parents' influence. My mom taught me the art of sales, firm, confident, persuasive, but never cruel. My dad was a contractor, and his trade knowledge ran deep through generations. From him, I inherited not just facts about carpentry and general contracting, but a way of solving problems hands-on. So when I got hired at this particular store, I felt like I'd found my place. This wasn't just any store. It was what the company called a training store. We weren't just selling paint. We were a revolving door for new hires, assistant managers, even district trainees. It made the environment lively, like a small campus inside a retail setting. We were close with sister stores, sales reps, and even the local community. Customers appreciated our professionalism and patience. Well, most customers. There was one exception. His name was Bob. Bob was in his late 60s, and he had a reputation that stretched across the region. My boss Tommy once described him as a sad old man who never adapted to the new world of respect. That was putting it mildly. Bob was sexist, rude, ableist, and loud. He thrived on belittling people. Everyone, trainees, managers, even seasoned reps, dreaded dealing with him. Tommy had warned me on day one. If you see Bob's name on the caller ID, don't pick up. Get me or one of the other specialists. Trust me, it's not worth your peace of mind. For 10 months, I'd followed that rule. I had no reason to poke the hornet's nest. Until one winter afternoon, when the phones rang, my coworkers were buried with customers, and Tommy was homesick. That was the day I had no choice but to pick up. The day had started quietly enough. I'd come in early, organized sample swatches for one of our trainees, and brewed myself a cup of cheap coffee that smelled faintly of cardboard but kept me awake. With half the staff away at a management seminar and another 2 out sick, we were down to 3 people running the whole store. At first, it felt manageable. The lobby was calm, and even our tint machines weren't humming too loud. I thought, maybe this will be an easy shift. Then the phone rang. I glanced at the screen. The name flashing there made my stomach clench. Bob. Ben, my coworker, was busy handling a tricky order with a contractor. Raphael was mixing colors for a customer who had already been waiting 10 minutes. There was no escape. If I didn't answer, the phone would ring out and someone would be even more stressed. I took a deep breath, plastered on my customer service voice, and picked up. Thank you for calling, Paint Store, in City. This is Jason. How can I help you today? The gravelly, nasal voice on the other end sent a shiver down my spine. This is Bob with company name plastered with his surname. I need another gallon of the same paint I picked up 2 days ago. I pulled up his account, typing as quickly as I could, the old phone crackling with static. All right, Bob, just to confirm, you'd like 1 more gallon of the exact same paint and color from that previous order? You'd think I had insulted his entire family. His response was a tidal wave of venom. His voice rose to a shout, booming through the receiver like he was in a football stadium. Are you deaf? Are you stupid? How many idiots do they hire here? The insults kept pouring out, personal, cruel, unrelenting. I could barely keep up with the order system as his words tore into me. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself not to hang up. Just get through this. Just finish the order. When he finally confirmed, I opened my mouth to close politely, but all I heard was the sharp click of him slamming the phone down. For a moment I sat there, my hand frozen on the receiver, my pulse hammering. I could feel the heat rising in my face, the humiliation crawling under my skin. That was the exact moment I decided, enough was enough. What would you have done in my shoes? Hung up, or endured until the order was finished? I put the receiver down and just sat there, staring at the scratched counter of our service desk. My hands were trembling. It wasn't the first time I'd been yelled at by a customer. Anyone in retail will tell you it's part of the job, but this was different. This wasn't frustration about an order or a mistake. It was abuse, plain and simple. Ben glanced over as he finished with his customer. He caught the look on my face. Was that? He asked. I nodded, my throat tight. Bob. Ben winced like he'd bitten into something sour. Damn. You all right? I wasn't. But admitting that out loud felt like giving Bob another victory. I need a minute, I muttered, already heading toward the stockroom. Back there, away from the customers, I pulled out my phone and texted Tommy, our manager. Heads up, Bob just verbally abused me over the phone. I'm in the stockroom trying to calm down. I didn't expect an immediate reply. Tommy was homesick, probably curled up in bed. But less than 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Incoming call, Tommy. His voice was raspy, congested, but loaded with concern. Jason, you okay? I told him everything. The way Bob had exploded over a simple confirmation, the insults, the sheer hostility. Tommy listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a pause on the line. Jason, he said finally, take whatever time you need. Step outside if you have to. I'll handle this. How? I asked. My chest still ached from the verbal beating. I'm calling his rep, Tommy replied. This isn't the first time Bob's crossed the line. But today is the last straw. When I hung up, a small wave of relief washed over me. Tommy wasn't the kind of boss to let things slide. If he said he'd handle it, he meant it. 15 minutes later, I was standing near one of the tint machines with Ben and Raphael, swapping old work stories to shake off the tension when my phone buzzed again. Tommy. This time his tone was sharper, energized. Guess what? Bob's banned. Effective immediately. My heart skipped. Wait, what? Yep. He's out. He can't order from us anymore. And he got an earful from his sales rep, and that's not all. Tommy let the sentence hang. I leaned against the counter, pulse quickening. Whatever was coming next, I could tell it was big. Tommy's voice lowered, almost conspiratorial. Jason, let's just say Bob's about to feel it where it hurts the most, his wallet. If you were in my shoes, would you be satisfied knowing he was banned, or would you want to see his business crumble too? The next morning I walked into the store and immediately noticed the shift in atmosphere. Jen, our assistant manager, and Patty, one of the trainees, were waiting near the counter. Both looked at me with concern. Hey, you okay? Jen asked. I shrugged, feeling the weight of yesterday still lingering. I'll survive. Patty tilted her head. Was it Bob? I didn't even have to answer. My silence was enough. Before I could explain further, Tommy walked in, looking pale from his cold, but grinning with a kind of grim satisfaction. He fist-bumped me and said quietly, You should have heard the chewing out Bob got yesterday. I raised an eyebrow. From his rep? Not just his rep. Tommy leaned closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. A client of his too. Apparently his last job was so sloppy that when the storm rolled through, the paint cracked like alligator skin. Total disaster. And now that same rep has hiked his prices way up. No more sweetheart discounts. I blinked, absorbing it. Contractors like Bob relied on bulk discounts and favorable pricing to stay competitive. Without that, his profit margins would evaporate. And get this, Tommy continued, word spreading. Our sister store already knows. Others in the district too. They're cutting him off. No discounts, no recommendations, nothing. He's radioactive. I felt my lips curve into a slow smile. After months of walking on eggshells whenever Bob's name popped up, it was finally happening. Ben wandered over, catching the tail end of the conversation. Wait, are you saying? Yep, Tommy confirmed. Bob's not just banned here. He's on the blacklist across the region. For the first time since the call, I felt the knot in my stomach loosen. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone Bob had disrespected, trainees, specialists, reps. We had all carried his abuse, and now, finally, there was justice. But Tommy wasn't done. Don't get too comfortable, he warned. Guys like Bob don't go down quietly. He's going to push back. He always does. His words lodged in my brain like a splinter. Was this really the end of Bob, or just the beginning of another nightmare? I thought Bob's downfall had started. What I didn't realize was that his own clients were about to accelerate it in ways none of us could predict. Have you ever seen someone so toxic that their own reputation destroyed them? Drop your story in the comments. By the end of that week, it wasn't just our store buzzing with the news. Word traveled fast in our region, especially among contractors and suppliers. Everyone knew Bob's reputation for being difficult, but now there was something concrete, proof that his abuse had finally backfired. I overheard Raphael one morning talking to a rep from another district. Yeah, he's done. Nobody's giving him a break anymore. Not after what he pulled. The rep's voice, faint through the phone, had the amused tone of someone who'd been waiting for this day. And it wasn't just the reps. Customers who had once done business with Bob started showing up at our store, whispering their own stories. A woman in her 50s came in looking for a specific brand of primer. While I mixed her order, she leaned closer and said, "You know, my brother hired Bob last year. Worst decision he ever made. Sloppy work, overcharged him, then yelled at him when he complained. Karma's finally catching up." Each story added fuel to the fire. It was like watching a snowball turn into an avalanche. Jen, ever the professional, reminded us not to gloat in front of customers. But when the lobby was empty, the team couldn't help but share updates with each other. Ben smirked one afternoon as he returned from a delivery. Guess who's begging suppliers in the next county to cut him a deal? Nobody's biting. I should have felt guilty, but I didn't. For once, the scales of justice tilted in favor of the people he'd mistreated for years. Still, Tommy's warning echoed in my head. Guys like Bob don't go down quietly. He wasn't wrong. One afternoon, while I was restocking the tint base, the store phone rang. Raphael picked it up, then immediately pressed the receiver against his chest and gave me a look. "It's Bob. He's demanding to talk to you." I froze. "Why me?" "He says you're the one who started this mess." My pulse spiked. Bob blaming me wasn't surprising, but hearing him try to claw his way back into relevance through me made my stomach churn. Raphael hung up on him, but the message was clear. Bob wasn't just losing business. He was desperate, and he knew exactly who to blame. That night, I told myself maybe it was finally over. But the very next day, I learned just how wrong I was. Because Bob's own clients weren't just abandoning him. They were about to expose him. What's worse in your opinion, being banned from a store, or having your own clients turn against you publicly? The next morning, Tommy walked in with a look that told me something big had happened. He dropped his bag behind the counter and motioned me over. "Jason, you're going to want to see this." On his phone was a picture sent by one of Bob's former clients. It showed a house exterior with paint peeling and cracking like the hide of an alligator. Entire sections looked warped, as if the surface had buckled under stress. "That's Bob's work," Tommy said flatly. "The storms last week exposed it. The client sent this to the rep, and now the rep's forwarding it to everyone." I stared at the photo, a mix of disbelief and grim satisfaction filling me. This wasn't just a minor mistake. It was evidence of incompetence, undeniable proof that Bob had cut corners. The fallout was immediate. That same client filed a complaint with the supplier, demanding a refund. Others started to pile on, sharing similar horror stories. By the end of the day, Bob's name was circulating through group chats, contractor forums, even Facebook community boards. Expected twist: Bob had been banned from our store and lost his discounts. That alone would have crippled his business. Unexpected twist: his clients themselves were now calling him out publicly, dragging his reputation through the mud. Jen shook her head as she read one of the online threads. "This is worse than a ban. This is a public execution." I couldn't disagree. Within a few days, Bob wasn't just struggling. He was radioactive. Contractors stopped subcontracting him. Customers refused to take his calls. Even trainees at other stores were being told stories about the guy who screamed himself out of business. And me? I was left wondering how far it would go. Would Bob try to retaliate? Would he show up at the store, red-faced and screaming? Or was this the final nail in his coffin? I thought the worst was over. But then I learned something that shook me even more. Bob wasn't just losing clients. He was losing everything. Have you ever seen someone so arrogant that they ended up digging their own grave? Tell me in the comments. By the next week, it was official. Bob's empire, small as it was, had collapsed. I didn't hear this from gossip. I heard it straight from a fellow contractor who came into our store to pick up supplies. "Man," he said, lowering his voice, "you hear about Bob? He's hemorrhaging clients. Half the guys he used to subcontract with won't touch him now. He's toxic." It wasn't just professional fallout. It was financial. The sales rep, the same one who had finally snapped after years of Bob's behavior, confirmed to Tommy that Bob's account was being strangled. No discounts, no priority orders, no special accommodations. For a contractor, that was the kiss of death. Raphael found the whole thing hilarious. "Remember how he used to march in here like he owned the place?" he said one afternoon. "Now he can't even get a gallon of primer without paying top dollar. That's karma, man." But I couldn't laugh. Not yet. Some part of me was still waiting for Bob to burst through the door, red-faced, fists clenched, ready to unleash another tirade. Guys like him don't fade quietly. And sure enough, he tried. He called again, this time demanding that Tommy reinstate his account. When Tommy refused, Bob's voice exploded through the receiver so loudly I could hear it across the counter. But here's the difference. Tommy didn't flinch. He told Bob, calm as stone, "You're done. Don't call here again." Then he hung up. That was it. No more chances. No more tolerance. For the first time, I saw Bob for what he really was. Not some terrifying force, not an untouchable customer, but a desperate old man watching his last shreds of power slip through his fingers. I thought I'd feel relief. Instead, what I felt was something else, because the story wasn't just about Bob losing everything. It was about me realizing what I'd gained. Have you ever had a boss stand up for you so firmly that it changed how you saw yourself? The day after Tommy cut Bob off, I walked into work expecting more of the same gossip and fallout. Instead, I was greeted with something different. Patty, the trainee, handed me a coffee she'd bought on her way in. "You deserve this," she said, "after what you went through." Ben gave me a grin and clapped me on the shoulder. "You started the dominoes, man. Don't forget that." Even Raphael, usually the sarcastic one, nodded seriously. Most people would have crumbled under Bob's abuse. You didn't. That matters. I didn't know how to respond at first. I'd always seen myself as the rookie, the kid who was still proving himself in a store full of veterans. But suddenly I realized they didn't see me that way. To them, I was someone who'd stood up, even if it was just by refusing to be broken. That afternoon, Tommy pulled me aside. He was still pale from his cold, but his eyes were steady. "Jason, listen. You handled that better than you think. You didn't lash out. You didn't stoop to his level. You stood your ground. That's how you survive in this business." For the first time in weeks, I felt something lift inside me. Not just relief, but pride. And as I looked around the store, at the shelves I'd stocked, the paint I'd mixed, the co-workers who had my back, I realized Bob's downfall wasn't the main story. The real story was how I'd finally found my footing. Bob thought he'd break me with his words. Instead, he'd given me the one thing I didn't know I was missing, the confidence to know I belonged. It's been a few months since that phone call, and I still think about it sometimes. Not with the same sting, not with the same anxiety, but with a strange sense of gratitude. Bob lost everything: his discounts, his clients, his reputation. The last I heard, he tried to pivot into smaller handyman jobs, but word spreads fast in this business. Nobody wanted to work with him. The arrogance that had fueled his abuse had finally consumed him. As for me, I've grown. The verbal abuse rattled me at first. I won't lie about that. I spent days replaying it in my head, wondering if I could have handled it differently. But what came after changed me. I saw what real leadership looks like in Tommy's response. I felt what real solidarity feels like in the support of Ben, Raphael, Jen, and Patty. And I discovered that I'm stronger than I thought. Now, when I pick up the phone, I don't hesitate. I don't dread seeing a difficult name on the screen. Because I know two things. First, that I have the backing of my team, and second, that I can handle it. Bob thought his words could tear me down. Instead, they built me up. What would you have done if you were me? Take the abuse quietly, or let it spark the chain of events that finally brought a bully down? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you've ever had a Bob in your life, tell me how you handled it.